Hello, I'm Dr. Garrett Boyer. Welcome to Gospel Minded. We're going to spend the next few minutes talking about psychology, emotions, behavioral health, as these topics are relevant to every one of us, and we find these themes embedded so many places in our life, even in our spiritual life. So these themes of psychology, emotions, behavioral health even manifest themselves in the Gospels. And so the Gospel reading for this week, we have a powerful theme of light and darkness that I would like to reflect on with you for this edition of Gospel Minded. Of course, this isn't intended to be a substitute for going to church or for going to counseling or therapy if that's a practice you're involved with. But our psychology, our spirituality, so often join hands and are united. And again, I think that is the case for today as well. So the gospel reading for today is from John chapter 3. And this is where we have that beautiful verse, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have eternal life." And then it goes on. It says, "For God sent the Son into the world not to condemn the world, but that the world might be saved through him. He who believes in him is not condemned. He who does not believe is condemned already, because he has not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God. And this is the judgment, that the light has come into the world, and men loved darkness rather than light, because their deeds were evil. For everyone who does evil hates the light and does not come to the light, lest his deeds should be exposed. But he who does what is true comes to the light, and it may be clearly seen that his deeds have been wrought in God." So that's the gospel reading for this week. And again, that powerful motif and that theme of light versus darkness is kind of front and center for this Sunday's gospel reading. I think that image or that concept of light and darkness is really a rich topic to kind of think about. And we can look at this subject of light and darkness through a couple of different lenses. We can look at it through the lens of natural experiences and our experience of literal light and darkness as human beings. So there's a physical component to this. There's a psychological component to it, light and darkness, what that looks like, or how we interpret light and darkness. We hear people sometimes talk about going through a dark time, or I'm going through a dark part of my life. We put some interpretation to that. What does that mean? Or if we see somebody and they say, "Oh, I just feel so light," we associate a certain kind of emotion connected to that, right? And then we can talk about light and darkness in a spiritual sense, just like what the gospel talked about. Jesus, the light, the one who does right, goes towards the light. So a natural sense, a psychological sense, a spiritual sense of this theme of light and darkness. So first of all, naturally, we need light and we need darkness. They're both part of the natural phenomenon of experiencing life on this planet. Today is interesting because it's early spring. We're springing forward. We lost an hour of sleep, yeah, but we're gaining a lot of daylight. So why do we need the light? Of course, we know scientifically that the exposure we have to light is so healthy for us, triggering so many neurochemicals to keep us functioning optimally. If we don't have exposure to light, we make ourselves vulnerable to experiencing a lot of other issues, some of them physical, some of them psychological. And we've seen this. Matter of fact, not so long ago, I was having a conversation with my father-in-law, who was a submarine sailor when he was in the Navy years and years and years ago. And I remember him describing being in an environment like that where there's an absence of light for days, weeks, months at a time. It's a grueling environment because that absence of light makes it so difficult, because we're geared to have light in our life. It's a natural thing. The more we can get of it, the better we are. In fact, you've maybe heard of SAD lamps. They're called seasonal affective disorder lamps. And when, especially in regions where the sun is gone for a lot of the day, Alaska, the north, places like that, people can sit under these lamps and the light helps them get some of the presence that they're missing from the sun. So the sun is gone, but these SAD lamps can kind of help supplement, because we need the light. Naturally, we also need the darkness. We're sort of geared naturally to rest, repose, go to sleep when it's nighttime. So the natural occurrence of day and night, normal part of the human experience, and we rely on both. We need the light, we also need the darkness so that we know we need to rest and recharge. Very important. Now, psychologically, light versus darkness. As I said, we associate some meaning to those terms when we talk about them with this sort of lens, or look at them through this lens of psychology. What does it mean when somebody says, I'm in a dark place, or I'm going through a real dark time? We typically associate that darkness with something bad, something troubling, something hard. They're going through something that they're not equipped for, something they don't want to be dealing with. And darkness, just like it is in the natural world, is a normal thing. That psychological darkness that we experience is also part of the experience of being a human being. I would love it if I could say every part of my day all the time has got this lightness, there's this airiness about it, that I don't feel bogged down or pressure or have to deal with the challenges or struggles that come up. But the truth of the matter is that as a human being, you and I experience this psychological darkness from time to time, and too much of it can really be detrimental to our ability to flourish and function optimally. At the same time, what can we do to limit that time that we're in the darkness psychologically? How can we have less of that and more of the light? Well, there are some things that we can do when we're in those psychological dark times. We can expose it to light. So many times the things that leave us feeling like we're in the dark are things that we feel, but we don't necessarily do the best job of taking the action to rectify it or make it better. So for example, somebody who is going through a lot of things occupationally, they start feeling stressors at work, burnout, fatigue. What do they do with that? Do they put themselves in a position to try and fix those issues? I can tell you as a psychologist, they don't come to me right away. Usually I'm not seeing folks until some real damage has been done or until they're close to a breaking point. If they were to try and address some of these things earlier and expose the challenges that they are having to the light, wow, it's like a eureka experience where I've noticed folks will be thinking, this is amazing, I wish I would have done this earlier. Because when we expose the light psychologically to those darknesses that we find ourselves bogged down with at different points of our life, it makes a big difference. So expose those darknesses that you experience to that which is light. And I don't know what that is for you. Maybe it's therapy, maybe it's family time, maybe it's spirituality. I don't know. But you know what your own darknesses are. The light is the opposite. So if you're feeling all kinds of sad, all kinds of depressed, anxiety, whatever, what's the opposite of those darknesses? Look for that and try and use that as a way to try and get yourself to a different spot where you're feeling different about life. And then finally, the spirituality piece. Again, there's so much that could be said about all of these things: the natural light and darkness, the psychological light and darkness, but that spiritual theme of light and darkness, so prevalent in the scriptures and so relevant and beautiful, because again, this idea of light and darkness is something that we experience profoundly internally as a person. Psychologically, we experience it naturally every single day, light and darkness. But then that the Lord himself comes as the light of the world, and that we see spiritually when our soul isn't in a good place, it feels like there's darkness. And yet when we're feeling those moments of real spiritual intimacy with the Almighty, we could say, I think safely and confidently, that it's a time that we feel the lightness, the warmth of the light. There's just something very powerful, profound, good about it. And again, so much more has been said, could be said about this, but it's very useful and beautiful to reflect on and think about, especially as this is the gospel that we've been given for this Sunday. And providential that here we are springing forward, more exposure to the light on this day in the middle of March. So I hope this is useful for you. Light versus darkness, the constant dialogue, the experience that we all take part in day after day. Normal, natural, okay. It's okay in the natural world. It's okay psychologically. We recognize that it's there spiritually. What do we have to do to be sons and daughters of the light? Take those steps. I hope this is good stuff for you to think about. I've enjoyed thinking about it. I hope you have a good week. I'm Dr. Garrett Boyer at Gospel Minded. Take care.